You see this toothpick? Said Scrooge, returning quickly to the charge for the reason just assigned, and wishing, though it were only for a second, to divert the vision's stony gaze from himself. I do, replied the ghost. You are not looking at it, said Scrooge. But I see it, said the ghost, notwithstanding. Well, returned Scrooge, I have but to swallow this, and be for the rest of my days persecuted by a legion of goblins, all of my own creation. Humbug, I tell you, humbug! At this the spirit raised a frightful cry, and shook its chain with such dismal and appalling noise that Scrooge held on tight for his chair, but to save himself from falling in a swoon. But how much greater was his horror when the phantom, taking off the bandage round its head, as if it were to warm, to wear indoors, its lower jaw dropped upon its breast. Scrooge fell upon his knees, clasped his hands before his face. Mercy, he said, dreadful apparition, why do you trouble me? Man of the worldly mind, replied the ghost, do you believe in me or not? I do, said Scrooge. I must, but why do spirits walk the earth, and why do they come to me? It is required of every man, the ghost returned, that the spirit within him should walk abroad among his fellowmen and travel far and wide, and if that spirit goes not forth in his life, it is condemned to do so after death. It is doomed to wander through the world. Oh, woe is me, and witness what it cannot share, but might have shared on earth, and turn to happiness. Again the spectre raised a cry, and shook its chain, and wrung its every shadowy hands. You are fettered, said Scrooge, trembling. Tell me why? I wear the chain I forged in life, replied the ghost. I made it link by link, yard by yard. I girded it on my own free will, and of my own free will I wore it. It is a pattern strange to you? Scrooge trembled more and more. Or would you know, pursued the ghost, the weight and length of the strong coil you bear yourself? It was full as heavy and long as this, 7 Christmas Eves ago. You've labored on it since its ponderous chain. Scrooge glanced about him on the floor in the expectation of finding himself surrounded by some 50 or 60 fathoms of iron cable, but he could see nothing. Jacob, he said imploringly, old Jacob Marley, tell me more. Speak comfort to me, Jacob. I've none to give, the ghost replied. It comes from other regions, Ebenezer Scrooge, and is conveyed by other ministers to other kinds of men. Nor can I tell you what I would. A very little more is all permitted to me. I cannot rest, I cannot stay, I cannot linger anywhere. My spirit never walked beyond our counting house. Mark me, in my life, my spirit never rode beyond the narrow limits of our money-changing hole. And weary journeys lie before me. It was a habit with Scrooge, whenever he became thoughtful, to put his hands in his breeches pockets, pondering on what the ghost had said. He did now, but without lifting his eyes up or getting off his knees. You must have been very slow about it, Jacob. Scrooge observed in a businesslike manner, though with humility and deference. Slow, the ghost repeated. 7 years dead, mused Scrooge, and traveling all the time. The whole time, said the ghost. No rest, no peace, incessant torture of remorse. You travel fast, said Scrooge. On the wings of the wind, replied the ghost. You might have got over a great quantity of ground in 7 years, said Scrooge. The ghost, on hearing this, set up another cry, and clinked his chain so hideously in the dead silence of the night that the ward would have not been justified in indicting it for a nuisance. Oh, you captive, bound, and double-ironed, cried the phantom, not to know the ages of incessant labor by immortal creatures, for this earth must pass into eternity before the good of which it is susceptible it all developed. Not to know that any Christian spirit working kindly in its little sphere, whatever it may be, will find its mortal life too short for its vast means of usefulness. Not to know that no space of regret can make amends for one's life opportunities misused. Yet such was I, oh, such was I. But you were always a good man of business, Jacob, faltered Scrooge, who now begun to apply this to himself. Business, cried the ghost, wringing his hands again. Mankind was my business, the common welfare of my business, and benevolence were all my business. The dealings of my trade were but a drop of water in the comprehensive ocean of my business. It held up its chain at arm's length as if it was the cause of all the unavailing grief, flung it heavily upon the ground again. At this time of the rolling year, the spectre said, I suffer most. Why did I walk through crowds of fellow beings with my eyes turned down and never raise them to that blessed star which led the wise men to a poor abode? Were there no poor homes to which its light would have conducted me? Scrooge was very much dismayed to hear the spectre going on at this rate, and began to quake exceedingly. Hear me, cried the ghost. My time is nearly gone. I will, said Scrooge, but don't play hard upon me. Don't be flowery, Jacob. Pray. How is it that I appear before you in the shape you can see? I may not tell. I have sat invisible beside you many, many a day, and it was not an agreeable idea. Scrooge shivered and wiped the perspiration from his brow. I think that means sweat. That is no light part of my penance, pursued the ghost. I am here tonight to warn you that you have yet a chance and hope of escaping my fate, a chance and hope of procuring Ebenezer. You were always a good friend to me, said Scrooge. Thank you. You will be haunted, resumed the ghost, by 3 spirits. Scrooge's countenance fell almost as low as the ghost's had done. That the chance and hope you mentioned, Jacob? He demanded with a faltering voice. It is. I think I'd rather not, said Scrooge. Without their visits, said the ghost, you cannot hope to shun the path I tread. Expect the first tomorrow when the bell tolls 1. Couldn't I take them all at once and have it over? Jacob hinted. Scrooge hinted. expect the second on the next night at the same hour. The third upon the next night when the last stroke of 12 has ceased to vibrate. Look to see me no more, and look that, for your own sake, you remember what has been passed between us. When it had said these words, the spectre took its wrapper from the table and bound it around its head as before. Scrooge knew this by the smart sound of its teeth made. When the jaws were brought together by the bandage, he ventured to raise his eyes again and found the supernatural visitor confronting him in the erect attitude with its chain wound over around its arm. The apparition... got something in my eye here. All better. The apparition walked backward from him, and at every step it took, the window raised itself a little, so that when the spectre reached it, it was wide open. It beckoned Scrooge to approach, which he did, which they were within 2 paces of each other. Marley's ghost held up its hand, warning him to come no nearer. Scrooge stopped, not so much in obedience as in surprise and fear, for on the raising of the hand he became sensible of confused noises in the air, incoherent sounds of lamentation, of regret, wailings, inexpressibly sorrowful and self-accusatory. The spectre, after listening for a moment, joined in the mournful dirge and floated out upon the bleak dark night. Scrooge followed to the window, desperate in his curiosity. He looked out. The air was filled with phantoms wandering hither and thither in restless haste, moaning as they went. Every one of them wore chains like Marley's ghost. Some few, they might be guilty of governments, were linked together. None were free. Many had been personally known to Scrooge in their lives. He'd become quite familiar with one old ghost in a white waistcoat, a monstrous iron safe attached to its ankle, who cried piteously at being unable to assist a wretched woman with an infant whom saw below upon a doorstep. The misery with them all was clearly what they had sought to interfere for good in human matters, and had lost the power forever. Whether these creatures faded into mist, or mist enshrouded them, he couldn't tell. But they had their spear voices faded together, and the night came as it had been when he walked home. Scrooge closed the window and examined the door by which the ghost had entered. It was double locked as he locked it with his own hands, and the bolts were undisturbed. He tried to say, "Humbug," but stopped at the first syllable. And being from the emotion he had undergone, and the fatigues of the day, or the glimpse of the invisible world, or the dull conversation of the ghost, or the lateness of the hour, much in need of repose, went straight to bed without undressing, and fell upon the instant.